As Christians, we're called to be Christ-like. But I think too often we don't understand what that means. And we're going to look at some of that on today's podcast. Welcome back to Feeding the 4,000, a channel dedicated to spreading God's word to anyone that will hear it. My name's Kevin. It's my brother in Christ, Billy. And we're just going to talk to you today about what it means to be Christ-like. So, Billy, we were just talking today, or just a few minutes ago, about we talked last week about judging others and how Jesus approached judgment of sin, but we didn't get into what does it actually mean to be Christ-like. And so I think it's important that we understand who Jesus was so that we can be like Jesus wants us to be. We were just talking about how Jesus bucked the system. He was, I like to say, radical, and some people get all bent out of shape about that word. He wasn't radical, blah, blah. For his time, he went against the grain. He did all of the things that everything that he taught flew in the face of what the Pharisees were saying. So for him, he was very direct. He didn't mince words, but he was also compassionate. He showed love. For even though he didn't like what the Pharisees were doing, he wanted them to come to him. He showed them, he wanted to give them grace. He wanted to give them mercy. And I was talking about his interaction with Nicodemus. Nicodemus was one of the teacher of teachers. He was the top guy. And Jesus sat down with him and showed compassion and showed grace. And as such, I think we see that Nicodemus becomes more open to, and some scholars would even say that Nicodemus kind of became a follower of Christ, but stopped short of just really diving in. He had this, like, he was being torn apart he was being led to follow Jesus, but he was a Pharisee. He didn't want to give up what he had, but he wanted to follow this guy that showed him so much compassion and love and grace. And I think it's indicative of, we can look at Matthew chapter 8, starting in verse 1. Jesus, and I'm going to lay some groundwork here. So Jesus had already given the Sermon on the Mount. So he had already been preaching for, I don't know how long it took him to give that sermon, but he had already had all of these people up there, and he's just preaching. He's giving this sermon, and then he's coming down off of the mountain. And it says that when Jesus came down from the mountain, large crowds followed him. If that were any of us, we would be like, hey, yo, can y'all just give me a minute? Like, I am done for the day. But it says a leper came to him and bowed down before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, I am willing, be cleansed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. That is, we were just talking about how simple that statement was, how easy it was for Jesus Christ to just say, I'm willing, it's done.
I think it goes back to his compassion. Like, I mean, we heard previously about his compassion on people after he had a great loss in his life. And people followed him out, and he didn't chastise them. He didn't try to run from them. He had compassion. And it's so simple here, just as you mentioned before with Nicodemus. I mean, he threw a curveball to Nicodemus because what Jesus said to him was foreign. He said, "What must I be do, or what must I do to be born again?" And initially Jesus told him to be born again. He said, "Must I go back into my mother's womb?" Like it didn't make sense. So Jesus explained to him what that meant. And like you mentioned before, Nicodemus was somehow able to see that. I think it's hard for us now to even understand that to the extent that the great teacher did back then. But here, as before, when he went out, what was the story? Was it when he went out and the 5,000 were fed? They followed him out. He was mourning his friend's death, maybe his cousin John the Baptist.
Yeah,
I can't
he had
quite remember.
just, I know what you're talking about. He had just found out that John had been killed,
Yeah,
and he's coming out of the boat and is um
met with a great
met,
multitude of people.
yeah, and it says, the scripture literally says, and he felt compassion for them.
Right. So exactly in this situation where we're talking about in Matthew 8, a large crowd followed him, and a man with leprosy came to him. Well, if we know anything about leprosy, those sort of people are cast out of the city. They have sores. They're contagious. They're people that they're walking death, and they can pass it to you. I mean, the only thing we have recently to compare this to is COVID, except it's worse. And this person comes up to Jesus and says, "Lord, Lord, if you're willing, you can make me clean." And instead of pushing him away, Jesus said, "I am willing, be cleansed." Like Kevin, I told you before that I want this to be yours because you gave some revelation to me before that truly edified me. But going back to Jesus, man, it's his spirit, no matter where he's at. Like, I'm tired. I just gave you a gripe session for an hour in our Bible study before. When I look at this, it's like this man, he didn't care about the fact that he was tired. He didn't care about the fact that he probably needed a bath. He didn't care about the fact that he was probably hungry. He cared about the need that was presented to him. And when you think about us as modern day, in the now, 2025, men of God, women of God, Christians, that is not our mindset. If it is yours, then God bless you. I hope you're sharing that with others. But this man, he was always willing. And that's what I see here.
And I found what you were talking about. It is when he feeds the 5,000. It starts after John had been beheaded. It says, now when Jesus heard about John, he withdrew from there in a boat to a secluded place by himself. And when the people heard of this, they followed him on foot from the city. So here's a guy he's out here trying to mourn the loss of his cousin who he grew up with. And it says, when he went ashore, he saw a large crowd and felt compassion for them and healed their sick. So in the midst of his mourning, he was compassionate and kind enough to say, I'll put my needs aside for you. And it's indicative of who he was as a person. You know, and of course there's the whole, he and the Father were one, so he was God in the flesh, and there's but he had to walk this earth and be like us to an extent. So he got tired. I'm sure he got cranky. I'm sure he had a sense of humor. I'm certain that he did things. He may not have gotten angry, but he probably got cranky. I mean, we see an instance of when he got angry when he turned over the money changing tables at the during Passover. He's in there whipping people and turning over tables. He is human. He is 100% human and God all at the same time. But it shows that even in his tiredness, even in his distress, even in his mourning, he put himself aside to do what was right for people that needed him to do it. And it goes on even further because it says, when it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This place is desolate, and the hour is already late. So send the crowds away that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." And Jesus said to them, "They do not need to go away. Give them something to eat." So even in he's been going all day. He's mourning the loss of his cousin. He comes ashore and he's healing people into the evening. And through all of that, he goes, just take care of them.
Yeah.
That's what we're supposed to do.
It seems so simple, but so difficult because not many of us are going to have people that are of that great number following us because of our teaching. And I can promise you that was a great responsibility in and of itself. So not only is he a great teacher and he was looking for reprieve from that teaching because he was human, but he was mourning the the loss of someone that was important to him. So he wanted to get away from them. And it's not a whole lot different than here when we're talking about, like you said here in Matthew 8, when he came down from giving the Beatitudes. I mean, I have spoken to groups for 30 minutes and felt the Spirit of God move in me and onto the group that I've been speaking to. And when I went to bed that night, I usually went to bed early because Spirit moves through you. There's something that leaves you that goes into other people. And I think that the story when the woman with the issue of blood came to Jesus and she touched him and he felt that virtue leave him. It's very similar. As humans, we have our bodies are our power stations because that's how God created them. So when you work hard, part of that leaves you. There are other things that charge that. People do that. And maybe that's the case in all of these situations. He's charged by the people or he's drained, but still he's able to tap into that source of power that is able to he's able to transfer that power to others. But in both of these situations we're speaking of, there's complete humility, there's compassion, there's willingness. And I think that's a powerful lesson for us to learn. Our words don't always have to be perfect, but if our spirit is where Christ wants it to be, because we're in tune with it, that power that we have can be passed to others. And even if it's a kind word, even if it's just I hope you're okay, or I'm praying for you. I have a great example of this, and this is a woman of the faith who has, since I met her, found a good man who I have a good relationship with as well. She was a piano teacher. She was raising two kids. She was divorced. And anytime I ever had a chance to lift her up, I always said a kind word. I donated to her daughter's clarinet fund. But I always made sure, and my wife knew of this woman, and my wife holds her in high regard as well. The point is I'm trying to make is this person was an edifier of others, and she never expected anything back in return. So we were able to bless her. I was able to bless her in words. My wife was able to bless her in food. She had a food restriction. We were able to bless her at the point of her need, and she's never forgotten that. And even to this day, there are not many people who speak music the way that I speak music. From what I've learned, I can send her songs that mean something to me, and they bless her, even though she doesn't know what the music is, but it speaks to me, and I'm able to share it, and it speaks to her because of that relationship. And it's not the same thing. I'm not healing leprosy, but it's compassion for someone who's in a space that is undesirable and loving on her and her kids. And it's a relationship that will stand strong. Obviously not on its own because I have my own woman. I don't know how to explain it, but multiple relationships have grown out of this thing because of this kindness that we have shown them. Our kids have shown them. We've shown it to their kids. We've supported their kids, and the edification of lifting someone else up. It's powerful. So, and that's just one example. There's been multiple, but not near as many as what Jesus experienced. But the point is, long story longer, that spirit that is attached to it, it's a spirit of purity, a spirit of edification, of building up, of no matter what you're going through, you have people who have your back that love you. And I know it may be hard for you to ask for help because of your raising, but we're here to give it, and we're going to give it whether you want it or not. And Kevin, I know you've experienced this. You've told me stories many times of you, of your dad, of where edification was the principle. And in every situation we read of, I know it's larger scale for Jesus because he reached so many people, but it it doesn't have to be 5,000 or 4,000, or it doesn't have to be 100. It can just be the person that's right in front of you. And just that act of kindness, that act of humility, of giving, it will last with that person for the rest of their breaths.
It's good that you brought up the Beatitudes earlier, because I was thinking of our discussion is what it means to be like Christ, and he literally gave us a blueprint for being like him. And I want to read the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And I want to caveat this by saying that I firmly believe that Jesus is laying out for people who he is in the Beatitudes. He's saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." He's not saying he is poor in spirit. He's saying that he is.
He's not haughty. He's the opposite of that.
Yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's the opposite of haughty. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. How many times do you think Jesus during his ministry mourned the loss of a soul because someone didn't believe? Blessed are the gentle.
We've seen each other mourn. We know what that means.
Yeah. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. He was gentle. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness. That one hits home. For theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you, falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad. Stephen, yeah, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. And you brought up the idea that you helped someone where they were, and that brought to mind another thing that Jesus said, that when you feed the least of these, you have fed me. He is telling us in that this is how I want you to act. When you see someone in need and you feed them, you're feeding me. You are taking care of me because you took the time to do what I would do. So, for those people out there that don't know or don't understand what it means to be Christ-like, it's all those things. Don't mince words. Don't hem and haw around subjects. Jesus is really clear in that. Let your yes be yes and your no be no. Don't give platitudes. If someone asks you a question, give them a straight answer. If someone questions you about your faith, give them a straight answer. But at the same time, be gentle, be merciful, pure in heart, make peace, look for ways to serve others. At the end of the day, we talked about this last time because I actually posted a short that was talking about Jesus the servant king. That was who he was. He was a servant. When he was at the Last Supper and he knew that that was his last night before he would be tortured and hung on a cross, what did he choose to do? He chose to wash the feet of the disciples. He chose to serve. We are chosen and we are called to serve.
Well, I want to add, I think that Jesus is the greatest example. And if you have a question on how to serve, just ask the servant king, because he left us his spirit, and the spirit is an advocate to the Father. And there's nothing more beautiful. If you haven't heard the voice of God, is to ask. We have the scriptures to help us not always understand. It's a guide. So the decoder that we have is the Spirit. And in light of what we've spoken about, we put it in our words. And the word of Christ is always, it's way more fulfilling than the thoughts that we have, the ways that we choose sometimes. When Kevin and I and our friend Bubba, we were having our Bible study earlier, it started off as a gripe fest for me. And then it was redirected. Has God done for you? And as I mentioned to them in my Bible study, I asked the Lord earlier this week to show me the joy of the Lord, because it says the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I don't have chapter and verse. You can look it up yourself. Just Google it. But I asked the Father to show me. And I think this is what Jesus did on a repeated basis. I said, show me joy because I need it. I'm in a bad place. And I was sitting on the back porch with my wife one cool evening, and she asked me, "Tell me the good things about your day." And I mentioned 5 or 6 things. And by the time I was done, I was overwhelmed with joy. And not only did joy come in, but there was peace. There was all the other fruits. They showed up and they started implementing themselves in ways that I can't explain in words now. They were displacing where I had lack of patience. There was a demonstration of what that patience looks like, where there was like a peace. There was displacement of peace with God's peace. And He speaks to me different than He may speak to you because we're all tailor made children, adopted. Patience, gentleness. There was gentleness like on display tenfold. Even though it's hard for me to give gentleness to my children sometimes when I tell them 7 times it's time to do this or don't do this because there's a consequence. Self control. All of these things showed up just because I got out of the way and I listened to the Spirit. So many times it's easy to let the distractions, the circumstances to come in and dictate your response. But if you quit listening to the circumstances and listen to the gentleness, the Spirit of Jesus, the Holy Spirit that He left for us, you will hear Him. And when He shows up as a multiplier. It's not just one thing. And that has been the most powerful thing that I felt in the past 2 weeks. I hope it came across as it's connecting to what Kevin was talking about earlier, because I can tell you it edified me and hoped it edified you.
So I want to end this episode on this note. Jesus wants us to commit our spirit to Him. And if we commit our spirit to Jesus daily, we will find the peace and we will find the heart of Jesus within ourselves. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the world that we forget to be like Christ. But it's really easy when you get out of the way and you give your spirit and your heart to the driver and say, "Hey, I don't want the wheel anymore. You take it. You drive. I'll get out of the way. You drive. I'll be a passenger." And you find a peace. You find compassion within yourself. You start to see yourself look at people differently. And that's what I want to say to everyone out there tonight is being a Christian does not make you holier than anyone else. It doesn't make you better than anyone else. It doesn't make you more worthy or more I don't even know. There's nothing that you can do on your own that makes you more pious than the next guy. We're flawed. We cannot do this on our own. We have to have Jesus. And we have to give ourselves wholeheartedly to the Creator and let Him do it for us. And ladies and gentlemen, this message, this came to me today. As I was driving in my car, God was like, you need to talk about what it means to be Christ-like. And I don't think it was strictly for the video. I don't think it was strictly for everyone out there to watch. It was for me. And it was for Billy. And it was for anyone else that's struggling right now with doubt, anger, contempt. All of those things go away when we give ourselves wholeheartedly to the Creator. And this is a message that I implore everyone, share it with as many people as you can share it with. This is how we get to where we're going. And with that, we have been feeding the 4,000. We'll see you guys the next time around.